Well, hello and welcome to the very final episode of Series 1 of the Paint Pod. My name is Sarah Hodgkins and I am the muralist with Charlotte Designs and, of course, now a podcaster. I have enjoyed 9 wonderful conversations with guests over the last few months, but I've decided, mainly through conversations with other people and, of course, some time challenges, that it would be quite nice for the last episode of the series to be a bit of a roundup, if you will, of the wonderful guests that I've talked to over the last few months. It doesn't actually seem possible that the first episode came out on International Women's Day back in March. To be honest, I'd only planned to do 6 episodes, but I've had such a wonderful crop of guests on my radar, and the feedback from both artists and listeners has been so positive that I decided to extend it to 10. So here goes with a little bit of a recap, a wander through the 9 fabulous artists that I've spoken to and some of the things that I've learned. I guess the first thing, and perhaps not a surprise, is just how different everyone's journey has been. When you consider that I've talked to 9 successful artists from around the UK and at various different stages of their career, from artists in their 20s to artists in their 50s, everyone has had a very different journey to get to where they are. My Bedford artist Robin Cayley's artistic journey started with a gift for her friend.
I don't know about you, but I am the sort of person who sometimes buys things thinking this will probably make a great present for someone, and then I give them something else and I don't know, then I've got a thing.
That's what you do, Robin.
Yeah.
You steal it.
I do, yeah. Well, this was one that it was something I bought and I then found a year or 2 later thinking, gosh, I haven't given this to anyone. I don't even know who to give it to. And it was a book that is called Draw Every Day, Draw Every Way. And it's a book that you draw in. It's a year of individual prompts for drawings it goes through 12 different kind of subjects and 12 different media.
Okay.
And I had a friend, it was my best friend at school who we used to do art together anyway. And, you know, we used to do all these things together. And I thought, she might like this. So I bought another copy and I gave it to her. And I said, no pressure, but let's draw every day for a year.
And I think it's really encouraging, particularly for listeners who are perhaps looking to embark on an artistic career, or for those who are just starting out and not really sure where it's going to take them. It's really encouraging to think that there are lots of options out there. It's not just one route to get to where you want to be. There are multiple paths and all of them can lead you to the levels of success that you are wanting. Some of the other differences in my artists were their backgrounds. Some of my artists were from artistic families that had creative input from an early age, and others didn't. Several of my guests did come from artistic backgrounds. Kat Croxford's mum was an artist, and that did play an important role in her decision to change her career. So what was the catalyst? What took you out of finance and into art as a full-time career? Was there a particular event?
Yeah, so it was, I was working in quite a high-pressure job in the glamorous world of telecoms. And my mum was running Joe Daisy Studio, this amazing thing that she created from nothing, just teaching people and running a lovely studio in South Oxfordshire. And I started to help out with some teaching, and then I thought, you know what, I'll just give working a break and I'll just, you know, immerse myself in art for a few months. And that was, that was what, 16 years ago? I never went back to the corporate world, and I just immersed myself in painting and teaching. And actually the teaching was what I was doing more of. And then in the last sort of 10 years, I started to do less teaching and started to develop my own practice more.
Farrah Fortnum was encouraged by her uncle, and Tom used art to set himself apart from his sporting brothers. But in every case, I think my artists were encouraged, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say not discouraged, from pursuing their art by immediate families. What particularly interests me is how universally education has not played a significant role in the encouragement and development of the artists. And in fact, most of the artists that I spoke to were actually very scathing of art education in the UK today. Incidentally, Amanda Racco, whose children were educated in France, did say that things were not that much better there. In fact, her children's art teacher was a policeman, so perhaps it's not just a British thing. Tom felt that his experience at university was unhelpful and, like Farah, was encouraged down the graphic design route. I mean, it's like it's the only career option for creatives.
I'm sure it does, but I don't know how much it actually comes into my daily practice now. The things that I'm...
Interesting.
For one, I didn't paint much during my whole degree. I think I picked up a paintbrush 3 times during the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't painting. I was embroidery initially, and then I went more into film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was very difficult, I would say, as well, because in that first year I was making work, and a lot of tutors kept saying to me, "Oh, you should really be doing a graphic design degree. Like you're very graphic." And I found that really offensive.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Not because I have anything against graphic design, but I was just like, I've got no interest. I mean, that's just not what I'm interested in doing. And it was so many people said it to me, it made me feel a bit like, what am I doing here? Like I obviously don't fit.
All of this certainly fits in with my own experience with my children and with the friends of my children too. Art is not taught well. It's not taught correctly. And it's not taught in a way that encourages creatives to express themselves and to believe that art is a career that they can go on to be successful in. And I think that's very sad. I don't know if anything can be done about that. You know, we have a new government here in the United Kingdom, and I appreciate that it's a very small sample that we have here. But if we're missing these hugely talented artists, we are doing something very wrong. And that should be a worry. You know, as a country, we have some of the very best artists throughout history. And to have not been noticing and developing and promoting those artists from an early age, well, in my view, it's criminal. I think one of the other things that's come out of my conversations is how every artist has developed their own practice in a very individual way. You know, I think back to Ellis O'Connor in the second episode, who is in her beautiful cottage up in the Scottish Highlands and doesn't see a lot of people. Her energy and her artwork has stacks of energy, and that all comes from her natural surroundings. It comes from the countryside, from the weather, and her reaction to that. Whereas when I talk to people like Cat Croxford or Tom Coford or Ellie Carr-Smiley, these are artists that have been fed from their interactions with other people. And those interactions are important in the development of their art. Robin Cayley and Andrew Hill are energized by their subject matters. And I think it's really interesting. It almost doesn't matter where you get that energy from, so long as you are noticing it and you are understanding it, and of course, constantly filling up that energy pot. I remember right at the very beginning, I think it was talking to Ellis again, about filling up the teapot. You know, you can't pour a cup of tea from an empty pot, and it's absolutely true. Wherever you get your energies and inspirations from, it's vital that you find the time to fill that energy teapot up so that you can continue to be successful in the output that that energy enables. My artists each have passions as well, which have been instrumental in the development of their practices. Ellis, partly due to her location, I'm sure, on Skye, draws inspiration from the environment around her.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's affecting everyone in very different ways. And I think having spent a lot of time also in the high Arctic and then in Iceland, I've seen it in a way that's very obvious as it is in the more extreme parts of the planet, but also even living here and hearing from people that live here and that have lived here their whole lives, which I haven't, and saying things like, oh, we've never had such a rainy warm season like this before, or even like last year. It's so beautiful to obviously get sunshine after a very long winter. But we had from like May until June, it didn't rain for like nearly 2 months, which is honestly unheard of in the Scottish Highlands.
Yes,
like
imagine.
Seriously. And, you know, to begin with, it's like, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is such a novelty. But actually, that also isn't really, that feels a bit scary after a little while. And yeah, just like very mild winters. And so, yeah, you can really feel, you can feel that even if you've not been in a place for that long.
Farrah Fortnum's distinctive style originated from a trip where she saw firsthand the effect of climate change on the coral reefs that she visited.
It's when I went abroad on holiday, took a year out and went snorkeling and swimming in the Great Barrier Reef. I've talked about this so many times, that is the big sort of shift in my work. I thought, wow, I want to paint what I'm seeing here. This is stunning. So I got the real inspiration from swimming in with the coral reefs and with the shoals of fish, and I just wanted to paint the colours and the movement that I saw. I've never seen anything just move like that. But also along with that came the realization that the coral reefs are dying. They're being bleached by climate change, and I learned a lot about that while I was out there. And I thought, oh gosh, this is really heartbreaking. I've just come here, I've just experienced this for the first time in my life, and for them to say, oh, if you come back 20 years, they won't exist, they'll be bleached. This is how dire the
Terrifying,
situation
isn't it?
And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. I said, I want my family and friends to know this, to see this. So I came back to England and started painting my heart out, just canvas after canvas after canvas of coral reefs and the oceans, and to get that message across, like these are precious ecosystems that we need to protect.
And Amanda Racco, a British artist working out of France, talked about how she sees the development of her practice in the wide variety of subjects that interest her.
One never reaches the end of a journey as an artist. It's all an evolution. It's all a long journey. You evolve, you paint one thing 1 minute and then something comes along and you think, oh, I really want to have a go at that. I do anyway. That's me. I can't be a one-trick pony. That's not who I am. I'm just, the world is my oyster. I'm influenced by so many things. I have to admit, I don't understand artists that say, oh, I've got a blockage, I've lost inspiration. I'm like, what? The world inspires me. So that there's nothing really that's off limits for me. If I make a connection to that thing, I will want to paint it.
I thought what was also interesting was how artists are combining different disciplines to enable them to have successful careers. And I personally think that's a good thing. Kat and Alexandra Buckle, for instance, have successful teaching businesses. And Farrah, in fact, also teaches dance, which is obviously another amazing art form. And I think it's interesting to see how the desire to impart knowledge and to guide and help other people to harness their creativity is actually a creative force in its own right. And I think it's very interesting how not only does it obviously provide another source of income, which, let's face it, is always welcome, but it's also a creative outlet in its own way. And I think finding a way to harness that creativity and to make money from it is hugely important. And I'd really welcome feedback from our listeners, particularly if they are artists, on how they are turning their artwork into, if you like, commodities that can be sold. These things are really important and a great way of ensuring that the time and the effort that goes into creating a piece can basically earn you the money that you need to be able to continue to develop your art practice. I thought what was interesting is the different ways that people are selling their artwork. Andrew Hill, for instance, who has a very niche market, is very much going into places where he knows his customers are going to be. And I think if you've got a niche, it's absolutely the right thing to do. Now, although Andrew operates in a very small niche compared to most of my other artists, even he talks about niching within his niche.
A lot of people, think car art's a bit weird, and they're like, well, I'm never going to put a picture of a car up in the living room, that sort of thing.
They need to look at your car art.
but at the same time, if you can get somewhere where you've got the right set of customers, then you are definitely, you know, you've got a very targeted market. And I guess, you know, there are less car artists than there are general artists just selling pictures of flowers or mountains
Absolutely.
or whatever. So, you know, yes, from that point of view, it is definitely good. And I, you know, that comes down to like, even like, you know, sort of like specific shows. So, you know, you're right, there are shows everywhere, you know, now there's just so many shows. So, but you can go to, you know, shows that are just for Aston Martins, or shows that are, you know, stuff that's just for Ferraris and stuff. And so you're even more niche than just general automotive stuff, you know.
Alexandra Buckle is a linoprint artist, and she had great success early on by differentiating herself on the art platform Artfinder.
I think, at an art fair, another artist said, "Oh, have you tried the Artfinder website?" I was like, "Oh no, what's that?" You know, there's lots of websites. You know, it's hard to keep track of what they all are, what they all
indeed.
offer. She said, "Well, that's quite, you know, it's quite good. It's quite a good website. I've saw quite a few on there." So I started to upload to that. And I think it was a bit of right place, right time. I was quite lucky. I sort of uploaded. I had quite a backlog of work to upload at that point. I had many pieces.
Oh, really?
So I just upload a few every week to this website, and before I knew it, like, you go into the printmakers section and it was like all me. It's like,
Brilliant.
okay. But I was sort of the only person uploading colour for Lino at that point as well, so mine really stood out. And I remember one year, what year would it have been? Good question. Maybe 2015, Christmas. They used to do art of the day. They used to do an email art of the day, and they did one of mine as art of the day. And it was just after Christmas, and I think it just hit just at the right time when people were, you know, bored between Christmas and New Year. And I think I had like 7,000 hits on my artwork that day, and I sold several of them. And I'd been on the website maybe a few months at that point and sold one little one at that point. But then once that caught, it went bonkers for a long time, and I was selling loads on Artfinder.
We also got into some interesting discussions. Ellie Carr-Smiley is a young portrait artist who paints predominantly women. And we ended up having quite a conversation about how women throughout history have been painted by men for men. And I'll be honest, I'd never really considered this before.
This is a topic which is so layered, so do forgive me if I zip around a bit.
No,
I have so many thoughts and feelings about
all
all
the time in
this.
the world.
Perfect. So for me, it started from a place of, it was never a conscious choice to be just painting women. It was never, I woke up one day and went, this is what I'm going to do. It wasn't like that. It was more that was what felt natural to me to be making. And I've always been a massive girls girl. Like, all my closest friends are women, always sort of have been. And I think I started by painting my friends, and then people who seemed to be my peers, and faces that I knew and felt sort of connected with, because I've always sort of strived for an element of connection in my work. I think for me, that's a big part of what portraiture is all about. It's my connection, or an artist's connection with the person they're painting, whether they know them personally or not. There's that personal sort of link in there. And the same with an audience. When I go to the National Portrait Gallery, I'm forming my own connections with the paintings I'm seeing. So I think it started from a place of that. And being a woman myself, I think being able to put almost like an extra level of humanity to the women I'm painting, which sounds silly.
No, not at all.
I think that's almost what was there. And I think I was very much conscious of, I was painting women who really exist. And these aren't people who are fictional. And these aren't people that exist in that vacuum of me painting them. They don't just exist in the snapshot, in the image was taken, the photograph or what have you, or when I'm sitting with a sitter or something like that. They don't exist in that time frame. They have these huge lives and these huge complexities and these levels to them, these contradictions and everything else that I think has been so kind of misaligned over the sort of artistic canon.
And it's surprising how often COVID and lockdowns came up in conversation. Ellie, Robin and Farah very much owe their change of career to COVID and the seismic changes that it brought to all of our lives. Amanda and I got into a chat about this as well, about how art was so important to us all during this time, whether you're an artist or not. One of the biggest surprises for me was how often my interviewees have come back to me and said how beneficial they found the whole process. Tom, dare I say, declared one of my lines of questioning profound. I'll be honest, I'm not sure I've ever been profound in my entire life, so I will absolutely take that. Thank you, Tom. But I think sometimes, especially as artists, we do get very insular. We get very wrapped up in what it is we do and how we do it. And sometimes just taking a step back and viewing our practice from someone else's eyes can be hugely beneficial to how we then view our own practice. And I've been really pleased to see how much that's helped us all, both the people that I've talked to and also the listeners. And it's also helped me to understand my own practice. I have a thirst for knowledge about artists, and it's one of the reasons I'm going to go on and do another series. I just feel that there's lots more to talk about, lots more to see, lots more to do, and lots more amazing artists to chat to. I'm very excited about some of the artists that I already have lined up for the second series, so it's going to be hugely exciting. I've learned new skills, I've met new people, and I can't wait to do the second series. I would like some more guests. So if you're an artist who is successful in your field, I would very much like to talk to you. For the first series, I very much focused on British artists, but in the second series, I'm happy to perhaps take that a little further afield. So if you are running a successful practice in painting or multimedia art, then I would like to talk to you. I think it's fair to say that my guests, without exception, have really enjoyed the experience, almost as much as I've enjoyed talking to them. I'd also like to thank my family, my birdies, who are my business family, for listening to my ideas and for listening to my podcasts and giving me feedback, picking up on all those little things that weren't quite right in the early days. Thank you to everyone who's listened to the podcast. It's been really interesting for me that although clearly there is a large artistic following, I suppose that's to be expected, it's been really interesting that a lot of the listeners have nothing to do with art at all. I was at a party a week or so ago and I was talking to the dad of one of my son's friends who is not connected to the art world in any way. And he was saying how much he'd really enjoyed the podcast. And I think it's really interesting to hear how the artistic mind works. So a huge thank you once again to every single one of my guests. You have been brilliant. And if you know of any other guests that would like to be part of Series 2, please do let them know. Series 2 will be out later in the year when the madness of the outdoor painting season is over. So until then, thank you for joining me in this wander through our audio gallery of inspiration. Until next time.